Hello. I'm not sure.
I
I'm not sure if Raphael will be coming because we're in the middle of a retreat with Paula.
Oh.
I kind of helped preparing dinner, so I said, okay, I'm going to come and watch. But she's translating, so I don't know if she probably needs.
Anyway, I'm going to publish it on the WhatsApp so she can see it.
But it's not the same, is it?
No, it's not the same.
Definitely not the same.
Definitely not.
No.
I start the record.
Okay, I'll be right back.
Okay. I will just say it in English because there is 2 people now, or 3 people that speak English. First of all, Tashi Delek to everyone until Geshe will come. And I just want everyone know that in our website, I will show you next week. There is a lot of beautiful things that is going on in Dharma Friends. A lot of from our teachers and other Rinpoches that say that they will come here. So it's a really big bless for us. So I will share it next week, and I will show everything that is going on DFI as well in the next months. Yeah. Why do I call this stop?
I don't know.
So strange.
Hmm?
The recording here
Mm-hmm.
stop all the time.
Here's that.
Okay. I don't know why. Hi, Geshe.
Hi. Okay, sorry, I'm a little late.
I just will make you a co-host.
Sure, okay.
Okay.
All right, just a sec. All right. Let's start. Okay. So as usual, let's start with some breathing meditation. Just be mindful of the breath. And then in the space in front of you at the level of your forehead, visualize Buddha Shakyamuni. Who's inseparable from your Lama. Wearing the saffron robes of a monk. And appearing as an emanation of all the enlightened qualities all of us can attain. The entire visualization is made of light. Of blissful and radiant light. Inspiring us to practice in order to attain the same state as the Buddha. And then think that you're surrounded by all sentient beings, who are all appearing in the human form. Drowning in the ocean of samsara. Uncontrollably generating the causes for future suffering. Try to generate this deep sense of care that you usually have for a loved one. Affectionate love that is a feeling of closeness and concern for all sentient beings. That no matter who it is, this being is important. Their well-being is important. And then generate great compassion. Affectionate love that wishes for all sentient beings to be free from suffering and its causes. Try to really feel this from the depth of your heart. That sincere wish, may all sentient beings be free from suffering and its causes, and may I be able to protect them from whatever prevents them from attaining liberation and enlightenment. And that great compassion then gives way to the altruistic attitude that is determined to do whatever is necessary to help sentient beings eliminate their sufferings by eliminating whatever prevents them from attaining liberation and even enlightenment. Since we can only do so effectively once we become enlightened, generate the mind of enlightenment, the deep aspiration and determination to become fully enlightened for the benefit of each and every sentient being. I think that it's also with this motivation that we study Nagarjuna's text. And then without letting go of the visualization and your motivation, let's recite the prayer. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits, of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits, of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Sorry, I forgot to wait until you could see the prayer. Okay. All right, let's start. Oops. Okay, again. Oh, there it is. Can you see the outlines? Can you see the Lamrim outlines?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. All right. Now we've covered the 10 richnesses as well as what are they? The 8 freedoms and the 10 richnesses, covered all those. And then for next time, please focus on this outline here, considering the importance of a precious human life from the viewpoint of temporary goals, from the viewpoint of ultimate goals, and to also consider the fact that in every moment our precious human life is valuable. So again, to meditate on these 3 aspects, well, you can't do this without, of course, considering the fact how fortunate we are. And maybe start your meditation by considering certain people that, especially at this modern day and age, have so little freedoms, have so little opportunities, and the fact that, well, we have these opportunities. So to take to mind, for instance, people who are homeless, who have no opportunity to visit a Dharma course or attend teachings online or even travel somewhere. Well, simply because they don't have a home, they don't have enough money to do what we can do. Consider the situation of people who are addicted to narcotics, to drugs, alcohol, and so forth, in such a way that they have no freedom, they're totally controlled by their addiction. And again, to feel how fortunate we are at this time and age, at this time and at this point in our life, we don't suffer from this. And for many other situations, we don't suffer from a lack of certain freedoms, and we have the opportunity to study and practice the Dharma. And so to again reflect on this, but also from the point of view of temporary goals. I mean, just from a temporary point of view of being able to get the books we need, find the websites we need, to read the texts and so forth. So just from the point of view of what we need right now for our Dharma practice, the fact we can sit and meditate, reflect on whatever's necessary, whatever we'd like to meditate on, we need to meditate on. And then, of course, from the point of view of the ultimate goals, which are liberation and enlightenment, again, we've got the best situation, the best circumstances. We've got all the facilities that are necessary to work towards this final goal. And that in every moment, of course, this opportunity is precious, because it could be over any time. We don't know how long we're going to be around, and we shouldn't waste a single moment. So that any opportunity to accumulate virtue shouldn't be wasted, and we should be careful about any moment in which we become angry and allow for our anger and our aversion to just fester in our mind, and in that way destroy virtuous potential and so forth. So to really reflect on this, on these 3 points, the way I just talked about, and I'm sure you've got other ways to reflect on these 3. Okay, great. So that's for next week or this coming week. And then, well, we got to the 8 attributes in the text. Oh, Jimmy suggested to add to this material, to also add the Tibetan terminology. He said that it would be helpful to have the Tibetan words, possibly even in Tibetan writing, and if not, well, in Wiley. And of course, I totally agree. It would be really helpful to have that. Because then he says you can look at Alex Berson's website, at other websites, at other explanations, and just deepen your understanding. Yeah, I totally agree with you. This is a great idea, except it really takes a long time to do that. Because first of all, what are the kind of key words like wisdom, perfection of wisdom, the treatises? So these are all kind of specific terms, specific Dharma terms, the extreme of reification, the extreme of nihilism. I just don't have the time to do that. Unfortunately, it's difficult enough to get the material in time, to get the material to you in time. I mean, this time I couldn't do it because of His Holiness's teachings and having to prepare for that to be able to translate. And so it was already quite late. So anyone who's interested in doing this, I mean, I'd be very grateful. I could just send you the files, the word files, so you can easily add the words to them, the terminology. I think it's a great idea, but yeah, as I said, I couldn't do it at this point in time. At least to add the Wiley, I mean, the Sanskrit would be great as well. For that, there's a very good dictionary. I don't know, maybe someone could put it in the group while I'm talking, could put it in the chat. And then if you show the chat for those who watch it later, they can get that dictionary. It's by a German man called Christian Steinert, Steinert, Christian Steinert. So if you Google his name and then add Tibetan English Dictionary, it's a very good dictionary. He actually brings together different dictionaries, not just the Apple one. He also, I think he also adds Jeffrey Hopkins dictionary and quite a few others. So it's a large vocabulary, a lot of vocabulary, a lot of words that that part of this dictionary. And the best part is you can type in Wiley and get the Tibetan script. So even if you don't have Tibetan script on your computer, well, like you can type it in without using the script, just having the Wiley and have a list of different explanations. And also you've got the Sanskrit. Whenever it is available, whenever the Sanskrit is available, well, you find it there. So if there's anyone who's just, wait, let me just check whether anyone added it to the chat already. Yes, there you go. Dictionary Christian Steinert. Yeah, that's, if you click on this link, if you click here, it'll take you to the dictionary, and I think it's great. You can't download it, but if you're online, yeah, well, that's a good way to use a dictionary. Okay, great. All right. So we got to page, what was it, 4? No, 5 or 6. Got to the 8 attributes. I started talking about the 8 attributes. And again, my apologies for the material, for being so late with the material. Hopefully you attended the teachings. I totally forgot last time to mention to you that it would be great if you could attend the last teachings by His Holiness. You probably did, but if in case you didn't, I mean, they're still available online. It's not the same as being there live, being there at the same time, but still, it's still great to attend. And there were 2 days of teaching, so the 25th and the 26th. The first day, I don't know, and I asked different people, and no one, even from the private office, seemed to know why His Holiness taught only for a very short time, only about 30 minutes, I think it was. So suddenly, well, not suddenly, but decided, he said, no, that's it for today, and he left, which was quite unusual. But then the second day was so amazing. This was one of the most amazing teaching sessions that I remembered, and I keep telling people about it. If you have the chance to listen to it, if you haven't listened to it yet, well, do so, because His Holiness offered all these meditations on emptiness, like guided meditations on emptiness and bodhicitta, a few times over and over, again and again. His Holiness talked and asked us to meditate, and talk and asked us to meditate. And then, of course, he gave us a lung of the text, which was quite unexpected, because all the translator received a message that His Holiness will teach chapter 26, 18, and 24. So we were actually prepared for just those 3 chapters, or no, well, many of us prepared the entire text, but we were still expecting only these 3 chapters to be taught. And then His Holiness so kindly gave us the lung of the first 14 chapters. So that's okay. For a whole year, we've got the lung for the first 14 chapters, because I don't think we get much further than the first 14 chapters. And in that way, yeah, so you've got the lung, you've got the meditations, of course, that preceded that. Even on the first time, of course, on the first day, His Holiness gave this incredible teaching on emptiness. It was just a little shorter than expected. But then on the second day, like I said, His Holiness offered guided meditations, then taught 14 chapters of this text, and after that gave the ritual, the bodhisattva, the bodhicitta ritual, so for generating the mind in the form of the mind of enlightenment, in the form of a ritual, not the bodhisattva vow, but the ritual for generating the mind of enlightenment. So amazing. And I think it was more than 2 hours long. Anyway, so if you've got the chance, if you haven't listened yet, please do so. His Holiness also talked about the 8 attributes, briefly at least. And so let's go through them. These 8 attributes. So you remember last time I mentioned the verse of homage. And as I also said last time, well, I'll follow the explanation given by Lama Tsongkhapa in his Ocean of Reasoning. But as you'll notice, if you have the text, if you read the text, then you'll notice that there's a lot of explanation given, not just an explanation of the meaning of these words, like a word commentary, as it's called in Tibetan. So an explanation of what each term means, and of course, then an explanation of what these 8 here does not cease, does not arise, and so forth. These 8 attributes, what they mean, but also in relation to that, some other explanation that is very helpful for studying the rest of the text. And I'll try and integrate this into this handout. Not all the details, but just summarizing the most important points. Anyway, as we've heard, the Buddha, Nagarjuna praises the Buddha in this homage, praises the Buddha for teaching dependent arising. Dependent arising, being free of the 8 attributes, 8 particular attributes, which of course doesn't mean the 8 attributes. It doesn't mean that dependent arising, that which is dependent arising, does not cease or does not arise, but rather it means that they do not inherently. So it's whatever is independent, what has arisen in dependence on another phenomena, well, it does not inherently cease, it does not inherently arise, and so on. Okay, so therefore, in that way, Nagarjuna, he introduces these 8 attributes in the first verse, or in the first 2 verses of the text. I don't know whether we went through this, so maybe we didn't, but anyway, I just read it. So from the vantage point of the meditative equipoise directly realizing emptiness, from the perspective of this mind that directly realizes emptiness, from that perspective, from that vantage point, all there is emptiness. Therefore, if anything but emptiness were to appear to that mind, were to become the object of that mind, well, it would have to exist inherently. So there's nothing other than emptiness, only the non-findability of all these phenomena, for whatever exists, only that appears. And so from that perspective, there's nothing other than emptiness. But although, well, that doesn't mean that in such a state, oh yeah, remember I did go through this. So anyway, in such a state, there is still mental activity, of course, but there's no longer any conceptual fabrication, which is why the text says dependent arising, that is free from inherent existence, together with its 8 attributes. Well, when it's realized, when it's directly realized from the perspective of the mind that directly realizes it, and from the perspective, therefore, of the person directly realizing the emptiness of dependent arising and all other phenomena, well, dependent arising is free from fabrication. It is seen, its ultimate nature, it's seen as it exists. And in that situation, also, there's no suffering. Therefore, it's described as peaceful. All right, now we did all this. Okay. So then the 8 attributes, going through them, they can be categorized into 4 pairs: cessation, arising, annihilation, and permanence, and so forth. And the question that may arise, did I do this last time? Did I go through all this here?
Until page 8.
I did?
Yeah, but you said that you summarize again because you stopped in the here. No, a little bit down.
I didn't do the
in the
illustration
homage
yet.
Yeah,
This I didn't do yet, no.
No, this is not.
Okay.
Until the middle.
Okay, it's rather here. All right, so I'll just quickly go through it. Okay, so someone may argue, this is also part of Lama Tsongkhapa's explanation, his commentary. Why is the order not reversed? Wouldn't it be the case that something arises and then ceases? So first arising, then cessation. Then in terms of permanence, well, permanence, as you come to here, I mean, I'll talk about what permanence and annihilation means. First, you have the continuum of something, and then that continuum is annihilated. I mean, you have the continuum of a table, and then it's annihilated as a table. It stops to be a table, and instead it's firewood or whatever. So it would be permanence. Permanence doesn't literally mean permanence in the way we usually understand it. It'll be explained. But anyway, so first you would have permanence and then annihilation. And also with respect to a particular person, first you go and then you come back. And then distinction and identity, yeah, I guess, well, you could also put identity first in terms of the object itself. It is one with itself and distinct from other phenomena, different from other phenomena. Anyway, that would be the argument. Someone may object to the sequence of the elements of those four pairs, arguing that when there's arising, there's cessation. So you can only have cessation if there's arising first. That's just using here the first example of these four pairs, so the first of the four pairs. So that without the form of the letter does not occur. So it would make more sense to say does not arise, does not cease. Also, a person's birth or arising is at the beginning and their death or cessation at the end of their life. Okay, so you get already a sense here. Arising, what does that mean? It can also refer to birth and death. Birth and death are called birth and death for specific reasons, but in the end, they're a type of arising and a type of cessation. And you could also argue that each moment is the birth of a new situation and the death of an old situation. But of course, birth and death mean something very specific in the context of a person's life. However, still, first someone is born and then they die, therefore arising is first and cessation comes afterwards. So this is all in Lama Tsongkhapa's text, which is why I mention it here. But in the homage, the order is reversed. It's the other way around. Why? Well, in order to indicate that the order would be irrelevant if phenomena existed by their own character. It wouldn't matter. So if they existed by their own character, if they existed objectively, inherently from their own side, well, then they would have to either be, here taking the last four, and we'll talk more about it, but either distinct, different, or identical. They would be different or identical. They could not be different from some phenomena and the same as others. So they could only be either distinct or identical if they existed inherently. This is similar to saying, well, phenomena exist inherently. If you have a long pen, for instance, well, either it's long or it's short. It can't be both. It can't be both, because if it was inherently long or inherently short, inherently long and inherently short are contradictory. Just as saying long in relation to a matchstick, and short in relation to a matchstick. Those are contradictory. You can't have something that is both long in relation to a matchstick and short in relation to the matchstick. That is contradictory. You can have a phenomenon that is long in relation to a matchstick and short. No, you can have a phenomenon that is long in relation to a matchstick and short in relation to a broomstick, for instance. That is possible. But if it's in relation to nothing, if phenomena exist inherently as long, well, then it's long. It cannot be short. Because being long and being short are contradictory if it's not in relation to anything, right? The same is true for being one and different. Usually we can say I'm one with myself and different from everyone else. That is correct. It's in relation to myself that I'm one with myself, identical with myself, identical to myself. And I'm distinct, I'm different from everyone else. In relation to other people, they're different to me. That is correct, because it's in relation to other things that I can say I'm both different from that person and one with myself. But if phenomena existed inherently as different and identical, well, either they're different or they're identical. They're one or they're different. There's no other possibility. So they could not be different from some phenomena and the same as others. That wouldn't work. We'll talk more about it. Of course, this is only the very beginning, but just in case this isn't completely clear yet, well, it'll be explained. So this is because a phenomenon will be different from one thing and identical with something else in dependence on the other phenomena. Such dependence, of course, would be impossible if phenomena really existed in the way they appear to us. So again, it's explaining exactly that. Therefore, if something existed inherently, it would either have to be distinct or identical. In fact, none would be really possible. But if you insist that one of the two is possible, it can only be one of the two. It can't be both. Then, and this is again Lama Tsongkhapa's argument, if arising and cessation were inherently different, they were totally different. So it can only be one of the two. Arising and cessation can only be one of the two. So a person would not die after they were born, because either you die or you're born, but you can't be both. You can't have one person, a continuum of a person who at some point is born and another point dies, because they're totally separate. This dying person and person who's being born are totally different. So that wouldn't make sense. If they were inherently identical, which is the other possibility, either they're in totally the same or completely different. If they're completely different, that's one thing. If they're exactly the same, if they're identical, the very person who was born would die. When you're born, you die, and when you die, you're born, because that's the same thing. It's identical. And again, it wouldn't make sense that someone was born and dies, because, well, it's all together. Like, which one is it? Anyway, this is just some of the logic that is presented also in this text. So as you probably notice, the way Nagarjuna sets forth his reasoning is not by saying, oh, this is not correct because such and such. I mean, because it's dependent arising. So it's not correct to say it doesn't exist inherently because it's dependently arisen. He doesn't just simply make that statement, but instead he points out absurdities, extremes, like hypothetically, if phenomena existed inherently, this would lead to this absurdity, to this absurd consequence. So these are consequences, logical consequences, as they're called, very typical for the Prasangika school, to point out how absurd it would be. And the absurdities are endless. They're endless. And if you present enough absurdities, at some point we come to see, oh no, my assertion is just not, it doesn't make sense. Like, phenomena can't exist inherently because nothing would be possible. This wouldn't make sense and that wouldn't make sense. So this is a very helpful logical tool, and we use it in everyday life. I mean, the way our parents possibly taught us that this was not correct to not behave in a certain way, for instance. They may tell us, well, if you do this, then it follows from that such and such will be the problem, and then you won't find a job and you end up on the street and so forth. So all these extremes that could arise from that could possibly really arise, of course, from that, or the absurdities. If it was really the way you look at things, then that absurdity would arise and something else and so forth. And in that way, it's very helpful to let go of that wrong view in that way. Anyway, we'll hear more of this. So I've just added this because Lama Tsongkhapa explains this in some detail. So if arising and cessation were inherently different, a person would not die. Anyway, so therefore, if they existed inherently, if arising and cessation existed inherently, here the argument is not straightforward. He doesn't say, well, if they arise, then that happens. If they inherently arise, if they inherently cease, then this happens. This argument comes a little later. He argues together with being different and identical. If someone who arises, something that arises and ceases is inherently different, inherently the same, that's what follows from that. So it's kind of like bringing more elements, more of the attributes together. It's a little complicated, but it'll become clearer as we go along. But now we need to look at what is cessation and arising, rising and cessation. Okay, so let's look at this. And that's extremely important. This, what follows now, and there'll be more, of course, throughout the whole text, is how does something come into existence? Of course, in relation to or in dependence on causes and conditions. But it's all very important in terms of our understanding of karma. Of course, again, something arising, something ceasing, going out of existence. So all this is really important. Now, as it says here, with respect to the nature of an impermanent phenomenon, we heard before, arising and ceasing in this context here actually refers to impermanent phenomena. Of course, permanent phenomena can also arise, they can also cease, and it's good for our understanding to get a full understanding of cessation, arising, and of all phenomena, in fact, to include permanent phenomena. But we start off with impermanent phenomena because we're more familiar with them. We are very familiar with the sense objects, with colors, shapes, other people, our body, our mind. We're much more familiar with that than with permanent things. We don't think much of permanent phenomena. They're still there. They exist. Of course, impermanent phenomena couldn't exist if it wasn't for permanent phenomena. But nevertheless, it's the impermanent phenomena we're attached to, we resent, we are envious of, and so forth. Therefore, impermanent phenomena are more important, especially in the beginning in terms of our understanding. So with respect to the nature of an impermanent phenomenon, such as a sprout, taking a simple everyday life example, during the time of its cause, so when does the sprout arise? When does it arise? We have a sense the sprout arises when it's there, right? It's like when the sprout, you have a sprout that is arising. We think along these lines because we have a sense, well, if something arises, it has to be there, okay? Because, well, especially with the background of things are truly a sprout and they truly arise and so forth. So if I ask, usually in a setting such as this kind of class, this class on philosophy, when does the seed arise? When does the sprout arise? When does that actually happen? There's a sense, well, after it has grown from the seed, it arises. But actually, that's when it has arisen, okay? So it's as you can see here from this, well, let me first go through the writing. So it arises moment by moment at the time of its cause. So at the time when the sprout is not there yet, at the time of its cause, which is here, this is the moment, this is the time of the cause, right? This is when it seems like there's not much happening. And in actuality, of course, these moments of the seed, first moment, second moment, third, fourth, of course, they're all different, these moments, and they're all leading towards the sprout having arisen. Okay, so at that time, the seed, the sprout is arising. And that's when it has arisen. I think we can all agree that when it looks this way, we no longer call this entity a seed, we now call it a sprout. Okay, so conventionally, there's now a sprout. It arises moment by moment during those 4 moments. And of course, there are more than 4 moments, but I don't have enough space on the page, so I just chose 4 moments. Okay. Oh, this is me moving around. Sorry, I hope I don't get you dizzy with not being able to keep still with my mouse. Anyway, so it arises moment by moment to become the sprout. The seed, at the time of the seed, at the time when there's only the seed, the sprout arises moment by moment to become the sprout. And once it has arisen, starting from this moment onwards, very simplified version, but let's keep it simple. I mean, there's no need to go into all these subtler moments. And so once it has arisen, when has it arisen? Well, during this first moment, that's the first moment it has arisen. What does it now? It ceases moment by moment. It's ceasing. Now it's ceasing moment by moment. The sprout is ceasing moment by moment until it has ceased. When has it ceased? During this moment here, when there's no longer a sprout. Now, well, let's say it's now grown into a plant. It's no longer called a sprout, right? So it's gone out of existence as a sprout. But as we've heard, so this is therefore arising. So explaining arising and cessation, okay, right? What is our object here? The sprout. At the time of the seed, here's the explanation, at the time of the seed, which is the cause, the sprout, which is the result, it arises moment by moment. It arises moment by moment. This is what Lama Tsongkhapa says in his commentary. So during the time of the seed, the sprout arises moment by moment. I mean, Lama Tsongkhapa just says it arises moment by moment, this arising. And then once it has arisen, it ceases moment by moment, which means it changes. Ceasing and changing here mean the same thing. It ceases from moment to moment to be the former moment. So in the second moment, from the first moment to the second moment, here the change is quite obvious. Well, it ceases to be that first moment. It's ceasing. So it's ceasing because at the second moment, it's no longer that first moment. Therefore, looking at it from one perspective, it is changing. Looking at it from a different perspective, it's ceasing. So there's no contradiction. To cease means to change, and to change means to cease. But when we explain it in a slightly different way. Okay, it ceases to be the first moment. You can say from that point of view, it's ceasing, or it changes into the second moment. From that point of view, we can say it's changing. Anyway, as long as the sprout exists, it ceases because it changes. And we are the same. We're just the same. Before we were conceived as a human being in this life, we were arising. We were arising at the time of the cause, in particular, just before we died in our previous life, at the moment of death, the cause was present. When you think of the 12 links of dependent arising, there's the karmic seed that now ripens because there's attachment, well, there's craving, there's grasping, and they lead to the germination, of this karmic seed. The language is the same. We're using the language of seeds, of something growing from nature, if you like. So we talk about a karmic seed. Okay, so in our previous life, that's when we were arising as the human in this life. So being the human being we are now, that was happening at the end of our last life. And now that we are this human being, this particular human being, Dalit or whoever we are ceasing from moment to moment. We're changing moment by moment, moving towards the time when we have ceased. Okay, all right. So this is just a simple explanation of what arising and ceasing refers to. And as I said, we have a sense, like when I talk about exactly this in class for the first time to people who haven't been introduced to this, and I ask them when exactly, if I show them this picture, seed and sprout, tell me, when does the sprout arise and when does it cease? Most people say that's when it starts to arise, and this is when it's ceasing. Okay, but it's actually here. This is when it's arising. This is when it has arisen, and it's ceasing during this time. And this is when it has ceased, when it's no longer there. It makes sense, but we're not that consistent when we talk about it. Okay, so that's the first. Arising and ceasing, or ceasing and arising. Now, all this is conventional. All this is conventional. So saying that dependent arising, there's no cessation, or it doesn't cease, it doesn't arise. What does Nagarjuna teach us with these words? He's saying, yes, conventionally, we talk about something ceasing and something arising. Okay? It's in relation to this, that, and the other. Okay? In relation to, although there's no sprout here yet, we say it's arising, right? In relation to what's going to happen, we label it's arising. And in relation to what's happening once it has arisen and what has not yet happened, having ceased, we talk about ceasing. It's in relation to this, that, and the other that we apply these ideas, that we apply these terms. But does that happen inherently? No. No. If it happened inherently, intrinsically, it wouldn't need anything else. It would just happen without needing a later moment, a former moment, and so forth. But although that makes sense to our mind, from the perspective of our mind, that's not how phenomena work. And we need to go deeper, gain a deeper understanding. And of course, the whole text gives us the opportunity to dig deeper with regard to these ideas. And then the next attributes are annihilation and permanence. Okay, now this means something slightly different than we may expect. It's not permanent in the sense of not changing moment by moment. That's not what permanence means here. Annihilation comes a little closer to what annihilation usually means, but permanence needs to be explained. Anyway, so with respect to the continuum, first we heard about something coming into existence and going out of existence, and that's a continuum. Anything that exists, anything that is impermanent, I should say. Anything that is impermanent has a continuum, always has a continuum. Even a very short moment consists of a continuum of even smaller moments, because we've heard there is no smallest moment in time. So any small moment can be again subdivided, consists again of even shorter moments. Therefore, even the very short moments, just second, always consists of other moments. So we know about nanoseconds, for instance, but you can go even subtler and subtler. Each moment can be consists of even shorter moments. And we can go on endlessly, which is why every impermanent phenomenon is a continuum, has a continuum, or is a continuum. So with respect to the continuum of an impermanent phenomenon, so anything that exists, okay, sorry, I keep saying exists, anything that is impermanent, any impermanent phenomenon has a continuum. So a table, for instance, as long as that phenomenon exists, its continuum remains. Obviously, if you go back to the sprout, once the sprout has arisen, we can say its continuum remains. Okay, let's just go back. Even though it's different from moment to moment, there's a continuum. Simply because we call it sprout in each moment. In each moment, we call it sprout. Although these moments are different, but we don't give it a different name. We don't call this plant. We call it sprout. And therefore, conventionally, there's a continuum of sprout. Okay? So conventionally, and this is, of course, all conventionally, it's all from the point of view of conventions. Therefore, as long as something exists, so the table, when it exists, as long as it exists, its continuum remains. It sounds like, why are you saying that? It's so obvious, but it needs to be stressed. It needs to be stressed, and it becomes more obvious why this is important. So its continuum remains. We keep calling it a table, even though each moment of table is different, but it has the main characteristics that conventionally we ascribe to a table. Therefore, we can call it a table. While its previous continuum, the continuum of the tree trunk from which the table was crafted, for instance, has been annihilated. So I'm talking about a wooden table here, not a steel table, what have you. So if you look at this picture here, there's Lumberjane. She just cut the tree. And so you've got this tree trunk. This is the cause of the table. Again, a very simplified version of this. So you've got a wooden table here. Did I say tree? No, a wooden table. You've got a wooden table. This is like the object we're focusing on. As long as it remains, so during the existence of this table, we say its continuum is there. It's permanent, right? It remains. Its continuum remains. Let me just continue reading here. But it was crafted from what? From this trunk. And so for this table to exist, its cause or its previous continuum, the continuum of the trunk, that had to be annihilated. They cannot exist together. Okay? All right, so the continuum of a tree trunk from which the table was crafted, for instance, has been annihilated. The table, at the time of the table, is no longer a trunk. Similarly, when the table has been chopped up and turned into firewood, its continuum has been annihilated, while the continuum of the firewood remains for some time. All right. So what we said before about arising and ceasing, all that applies as well, but we're not talking about this here. So we use a different example. But of course, you could also say during the time of the trunk, the table is arising. Okay, it seems like, how is it arising? There's no table. But, well, it has arisen during that time. So the only time it could be arising would be during that time, because you can't have a table that has not yet arisen, that has not yet been produced. Okay, now when we say produced, arisen is from the point of view of the table. It has arisen. Produced is from the point of view of the cause of the table, that which produces it. But they happen at the same time. When the table is produced, the table has arisen. Or when the table has been produced, the table has arisen. Okay. All right. Anyway, but we're not looking at it from the point of view of cessation and arising. We're looking at it from the point of view of when the table exists, its former continuum, or its former continuum means the continuum. Well, it's the former continuum of the table. The table previously was just a log of wood. Of course, there's more to a table than just the wood, but it's still not wrong to say that that wood was transformed to become the table. I mean, maybe there was 3 or 4 tables crafted from this wood, but nevertheless, there's no contradiction in saying that this wood became this table and then some other tables as well. But we're just focusing on this table. Okay, so let's just look what it says here. So during the existence of the felled tree trunk, its continuum, which consists of numerous moments of that trunk, is permanent. That is, it remains, while its previous continuum, the continuum of the tree, has been annihilated. Okay, so here we're taking it from the point of view of the tree trunk. Its permanence, its continuum is there right now. The tree trunk's continuum is there right now, and its previous continuum has been annihilated. Then, and this is the main example here, the table, during the existence of the table, its continuum, which consists of numerous moments of the table, is permanent. Many moments in time, let's say you have the table for a few years, many moments make up that table. So we talk about it permanent, in quotation marks, in that it's not permanent in the usual sense, but just its continuum as a table goes on. So from moment to moment, it's a table. So that remains the same. While its previous continuum, the continuum of the felled tree trunk, has been annihilated. And then that continuum goes on and it keeps changing. During the existence of the firewood, its continuum, which consists of numerous moments of the firewood, is permanent. That is, it remains for as long as it's firewood, as it's called firewood, because it has what we conventionally accept to be firewood. If it has all these characteristics, we then call it firewood. And for as long as we call it that, it's the continuum of firewood, and it's permanent in that sense of permanence here. It remains, while its former continuum as the table has ceased to exist, has been annihilated. Okay, you see this idea? So this is an important context, just an important concept, just as the previous concept of arising and cessation. It's all part of understanding cause and effect. Okay. And so applying it to ourselves, of course, is helpful. I'm no longer the teenager. I'm no longer the young woman. That has been annihilated. Now I'm a kind of old person. And so I remain as that kind of old person. And so that continuum remains, is permanent, until that is gone and I die and I'm reborn as a cow, for instance, right? And so the cow then remains for some time, while the human being as Kelsang Wangmo, as a continuum, has been annihilated. And so in that way, depending on which perspective we're looking at it, well, yesterday's I is gone, today's I remains, and then tomorrow there'll be tomorrow's I, tomorrow's me. And in that way, it's constantly changing, but we do talk about a particular continuum, and it just depends on how we look at it. Are we looking at it from the point of view of just a day? Or are we looking at it from the point of view of longer periods, right? Longer periods as in like toddler, child, elementary age child, what have you, teenager, adolescent, like young person, and so forth. These are longer periods. And then the person in 1987 on the 1st of January, and then the person, and then take shorter periods. Whichever way you look at it, you have that continuation. Very important. Also very important in terms of understanding past and future lives. There's a continuum. Anything that is impermanent has a continuum that goes on in different forms, of course, but you cannot have any continuum being annihilated in the sense it can stop to be a tree trunk, right? The continuum as being a tree trunk, that is annihilated here when you have the table. That's no longer a tree trunk, but this is still, the continuum goes on. This tree trunk transformed into something else. It's impossible that the components that make up this tree trunk, that they suddenly totally go out of existence. That's impossible. They transform into something else, into, I don't know, some parts into rotten wood, some parts into a table, other parts into a chair, and so forth. This is important because that happens to our mind as well. There's no way our mind can go out of existence. Just as it's true for physical objects, mental objects, such as our consciousness, can only transform, cannot become totally non-existent. Which is why, from a Buddhist point of view, well, yeah, even after we die, our mind continues. Unfortunately, there's no one who dies and comes back and says, oh yeah, by the way, sometimes there are people who remember their previous life, but well, depending on who you are, you don't believe them. And those who have near-death experiences, well, they say, yeah, I had this vivid experience and that vivid experience. And then we try to sometimes explain it away. Oh, the brain, there was still something, finding some explanation for it. But in actuality, the mind cannot go out of existence. The continuum of anger as being anger, that can be annihilated, right? Okay, I was angry this morning. That morning's anger, that is annihilated, right? That is annihilated. But the mind itself, from the point of view of being consciousness, that goes on. Okay. Anyway, all very important concepts to understand some of the essential Buddhist ideas. All right. So that's coming and going. I'll keep checking the time. No, sorry, that's not coming and going. That's what is it? Annihilation and permanence. All right. Okay. What's next? Coming and going. Now, coming and going, and Jimmy asked this question, wouldn't you also talk about coming and going in the same way as we talk about arising and ceasing? Well, you can, of course, use come and go in that way. I mentioned it last time. You can use it in this way, that something has come, a problem has arisen, has come, has arisen, the problem is gone. But here, coming and going it's not used in that sense of arising and ceasing. For instance, in the second chapter, it analyzes going, the action of walking. It literally talks about like going from one location to another. So here, this is also what Lama Tsongkhapa explains. With respect to the location or destination of an impermanent phenomenon, such as a person, they come closer from a distant place and go far away from nearby. Or you could change it around. They go far away from nearby and they come closer from a distant place. This is what coming and going means. And again, it's in relation to, it's this movement. Its movement is involved in coming and going, but it's in relation to closer, coming closer from a distant place. So moving closer from a distant place is described as coming, and moving further away from nearby is described as going. Okay, it's this movement. The movement is basically the same if you talk about walking, but in relation to which direction we label come and we label go. Of course, there's no inherent coming and there's no inherent going. Therefore, coming and going exist only conventionally and not objectively or from their own side. All right, so here you see it. Coming, someone comes, okay, and then someone goes. And again, so dependent phenomena, coming and going. The question, of course, arises, what is coming and going? Does it mean walking? Like, does a bus come and go in this context here? Well, yeah, it could probably be included. I mean, like in the second chapter, it talks specifically about walking. I mean, the word walking, but that's just analyzing this action, pretty much going. Like, what is the going in the going? Does it exist inherently or not? Is there some walking found within the action? That's the analysis. And this, of course, can be applied to any activity. Any activity. Usually when we analyze phenomena, we analyze, do they exist inherently or not? What we do is we take things such as tables and cars and the eye and the body. It's less activities. Like activities, we talk about thinking, we talk about walking, we talk about watching, working, studying. I mean, they're just labeled on the basis of many different moments, and they seem so real and concrete, but we need to analyze them, kind of take them apart in a certain way. And so this is what Nagarjuna does in the second chapter. But here, it's not clear coming and going. Like, I use the location and destination in terms of like a person coming and going, but it could be a car. It's not walking. It could be, it could be a mountain, right? So you may wonder, like, in what way does a mountain come and go? Well, think of the earth spinning the whole time. The mountain is always in movement. The whole earth is spinning. I actually had a picture first. I had an illustration of the earth at daytime and at nighttime. So it's like just the other way around. And I was going to put it in there, but I wasn't sure. My interpretation is not going too far. Like, I thought, leave, just come and go, just simple, have these two guys here walking towards us and walking away. But yeah, I still got that picture of the earth, because anything on this earth is actually in movement, of course, in relation to the whole universe. Mountains are moving, they come and go, right? Okay, so basically, again, coming and going, it's in relation to this and that, and they don't exist inherently. Okay, so I hope this is clear, coming and going. And then, very important, let me check the time. I don't have any questions to answer today, so I can just continue up to the time, up to the moment we start to meditate. Okay, so then we have distinction or difference and identity. Difference may be a better term, distinction, well, anyway, this is what is used in the translation. So, with respect to how phenomena relate to each other, phenomena either different from or the same as other phenomena. And again, that seems like, that is so simple. Like, why even mention it? Who cares? But it's extremely important for those of you who already have a background in philosophy. It's like an idea, a concept that forms the foundation for many other ideas. So however simple they may seem, from a broader perspective, they're actually a lot more complicated than they may seem. So before, as like rising and ceasing, it's not that difficult. But when you add more to it, in particular, analyze how phenomena really exist, it becomes more complicated. Coming, going, of course, the same applies to them. The continuum of one thing, one continuum ceasing, the other continuing, although the continuum in general goes on. All these ideas need to be understood. Anyway, now let's look at one and different, because this is not saying anything. So identity here means being identical to something, identical with something, or identical to something. So being the same or being one with. Oneness could also be used, but oneness has a different meaning, and that's why it's not a good word. But literally, it means the state of being one, right? So the state of being different from something and the state of being one with something, identical to something, or different, or the same as something. Okay. In contrast to being different from it, what does that mean? So all phenomena, this is from the point of view of how phenomena relate to each other. Previously, it was always in relation to something that, for instance, arising and cessation, annihilation and permanence, coming and going. It's always in relation to something that we talk about those. And here it's in relation to how phenomena relate to each other. Phenomena either different from or the same as other phenomena. So to use just a simple example, just a phenomenon such as a sunflower, for instance, or a car or a table, whatever, is different from anything that in terms of its meaning and its name is not identical or one with it. Now, this is a little bit more complicated. Its meaning, obviously, like for instance, here you have a tulip. It looks different. It's got a different name, got a different meaning. It looks differently. So meaning in the sense, like, how would you define a sunflower? Well, you define it differently. It's certain functions, of course, are the same or are similar. So certain functions are similar, but the way it looks and the way, I don't know, it grows, it's quite different. Anyway, so of course, obviously, a sunflower is different from a tulip. But it goes as far as being different has an extra meaning. For instance, sunflower and the opposite of not being a sunflower, okay? Reversed from being sunflower, okay? So you have a double negation, reversed from not being a sunflower. It's like minus minus is plus. You've got two negations, not reversed from, or the opposite of not being a sunflower is a sunflower, right? Not sunflower, in other words. So whatever is not a sunflower is a sunflower. But not sunflower, okay, or reversed from not being sunflower, is not the same as sunflower because it appears different to the mind. It's got a different term to relate to it. It appears different to conceptual consciousness, and therefore it's different. I didn't add this here. I didn't want to make it too complicated. I'll just mention it. Of course, it's right to say a sunflower is different from the tulip. That's pretty straightforward. That's easy. But even phenomena that, when we apply concepts such as not sunflower, okay, when we think about not sunflower, it appears different to just sunflower. And from that perspective, it's different. Although the object that it refers to, not sunflower and sunflower, refers to the same thing, but it appears differently to the mind. So that's an important idea. And I guess you can already, you get already a sense where this is moving towards, where this is going, basically. Where is this going? It's going towards phenomena being different or not. It depends on the mind. Of course, the mind is so important. And so, well, we know this. We can think of the same thing, but when we apply different concepts, these concepts appear very different to the mind, and we have a different understanding of them. So we may think of the same person, right? That we may think of the person who's the cook, and we may think of that same person from the point of view of being a student. The person who's the cook, the person who's the student is one person, right? It's the person who's a cook, who's a cook at night and a student by daytime. But still, we would still call this person a cook and a student. And still, when we think of this person from the point of view of being a cook or from the point of view of being a student, it appears different to the mind. The person, he or she, appears different to the mind. Therefore, Different means not just different in terms of its meaning. I'm not talking about a totally different person, but from the point of view of which term we use to think about it. Because we always use something to think about an object. We always need symbolism. We have a concept, we have a word that we use or an image that we use. Through that, we think about something. There's always something appearing to the mind. And what is it that appears to the mind? Well, that determines whether it is different from something else or not. Okay, I wasn't going to make it that complicated. I didn't mention any of this here. It's included in this, but I didn't want to make it that complicated. But again, it's an important part of philosophy, very important. And in a way, it is set in here. So anything that's different in terms of its meaning and its name is not identical or one with it. So, sorry, sunflower, for instance, is different from anything that in terms of its meaning and its name, the symbolism, like saying not flower or just flower, is not identical or one with it. For being the same or one with sunflower means to have the same meaning and the same name as it has, and therefore to appear in the same way to a conceptual consciousness as it does. Okay, and whatever exists is necessarily the same as or different from sunflower. It's as easy as that. We can say anything. In terms of relation, we can always determine very easily. We can easily say it's either the same or it's different, right? Okay, anyway. But again, this is only labeled. It's merely labeled. It doesn't exist in and of itself, of course. Okay, now those are the 8 attributes. That should be enough for today. And now we've got a little time left to do some meditation. Okay, so to just reflect on these attributes, on these concepts. But of course, we'll start with some breathing meditation. Now let's take these 8 attributes and apply them to ourselves. There is a conventional, merely labeled I. Which conventionally ceases and arises. The I arises. The I arises, and this arises in the sense that in our previous life, at the end of our previous life in particular, the self, this life, was arising. And when we came into existence, the self of this life has arisen. At the same time, the I of this life ceases. It changes. But it hasn't ceased yet. For as long as we are alive, we're still ceasing. Only once we have died, we're no longer the person of this life. We have ceased as that person. But are ceasing as someone else. And at the same time, as we change moment by moment in this lifetime, we exist in a state of permanence, in the sense that our continuum as a human being of this life continues up to our death. So from the moment of our conception of this lifetime up to our death, we are permanently a human continuum of this earth. While our continuum from a previous life has been annihilated. And the continuum of our future life has not yet arisen. And within this life, we're not always in the same place, for we can move We come and we go. Every time there's movement away from a nearby place, we go. And when moving closer from a faraway place to a nearby place, we come. And in relation to all the other phenomena that exist, we are either one with them or different from them. There's no third possibility. We are different from inanimate objects, different from other people, different from yesterday's I, last year's I, tomorrow's I, and so forth. Even I, who's a student, and I, who's a human being, they're not the same, not identical. They appear differently to our thoughts, to our conceptual consciousness. So all these concepts with respect to ourselves or anything else that is impermanent, are relevant to our conventional understanding of ourselves on a conventional level. Yet ultimately, or inherently, they don't exist. they're merely labeled. Just as the I, the self, is merely labeled. And now to conclude this analysis, whatever feeling that has arisen, whatever insight you've gained, spend a few moments single-pointedly focusing on that. And then let's dedicate whatever positive potential we've accumulated today. Let's once again dedicate it for the benefit of all sentient beings, towards the enlightened state of a Buddha. May we attain such a state to be of greatest benefit to ourselves and all others. But may this virtue, this potential, may also become a cause for our lamas, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama and all the other great lamas. May cause them to have an extremely long and healthy life, that they can continue to inspire and guide us. And may this positive potential also affect other people, especially those who suffer greatly from being homeless, being controlled by their addiction, and so forth. And of course, may it help those who are sick, like Geshe, Tali Lubin, and everyone else suffering physically or mentally, to quickly recover and find peace. And so with this in mind, let's recite the prayers. Through the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. In a land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All-powerful Chinrezig Denzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Okay, thank you very much. And all that remains is to remind you of the meditation. So please don't forget to meditate on the 3 points on the precious human rebirth I talked about in the beginning, how from a temporary point of view, the freedoms, the richness that we experience right now, how this is important, for how from the ultimate point of view, enlightenment, of course, this is extremely important, and how every moment counts. And of course, in particular, with regard to, well, comparing ourselves to those who are less fortunate, this is not just a cause, should not just give rise to compassion for those who are less fortunate, but also realize how fortunate we are right now and not to waste this precious opportunity. Okay, so have a great week, and I'll see you again next week. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Geshe.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.